And so the next part that they said they're going to tackle is gun. Well, let me talk about this for a second, because I just want to make this point real hard, real quick. The home manufacturing of guns is something that I am 100% in favor of. And I don't think that just because people are starting to use them more prolifically in crime, we should stop everyone from being able to gain access to them. It's not a solution to me.
No.
Either on a state level, a local level, or a federal level. At the deep federal standpoint of it, and from a human standpoint of it, and I've made this argument in articles before, home manufacture of firearms is the truest and, in a leftist way, most equitable way for anybody to be able to get a firearm.
Yeah.
If you're not going at it with a malicious manner. Even if you're a law-abiding citizen with no criminal history, you could get a background check, get a pistol, no problem. The most equitable way for you to do it is to buy it at home, make it yourself at home, and no one needs to know about it. It's also the surest way that the best way I can ensure that I can defend myself against the federal government if they decide that they're going to take everyone's guns away. They decide that that's what they're going to do. The best way I can continue to defend myself is to have one they don't know about. And that's in my opinion, that's my duty. That's my job. My job is to ensure that I have the ability to defend myself, my family, and people that believe in freedom from any force that stands to threaten them, whether that be an outside invader, another neighbor, the federal government, anybody. And the best way that I can do that is to have a home manufactured firearm that is reliable, that I am trained with, that the federal government does not have the ability to readily take away from me.
Yeah, that's sound reasoning right
So
there. I mean,
I just want to lay that out,
Yeah.
since we're talking about since we're talking about crime and things like that. I just want to lay it out there. There are laws and things like that, but that's my stance on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can essentially use the same, the argument of we need to ban all guns as, an example for that, because you look at, major cities and things like that have outlawed the possession of like pistols and handheld firearms and stuff like that. It has zero effect, if anything, to the positive. It might have a negative effect on the overall crime in the city. Just because these ghost guns exist doesn't mean, and it goes just to doesn't mean you're doing it with nefarious purposes point you've been making.
Right.
It just because there's more is not a bad thing. What it is that there's just more because it's easier, it's cheaper, it's possibly, you could certainly argue that it is the most constitutionally friendly thing you could do. I mean, it's the most fulfilling way to fulfill your Second Amendment right. I mean, there's all sorts of arguments for it. The only negative is that you just don't like guns, and you need to make sure the government knows where all the guns are at. I mean, even if you were to believe that in your own mind, why would you make these things illegal? Because you don't trust citizens to make them at home and then bring them in to register them, just like you do, like when you register your car every year and stuff like we do all the time now. You could drive, people drive around on expired registrations all the time, but like there's nothing says you have to necessarily, otherwise you'll get tickets and all this good stuff. But like no one's forcing you to go do that at the point of, hey, I just bought this car from somebody. Nobody's doing that. People do that on a societal level anyways. If you were somebody that really cared about that, but you still wanted to buy this system of firearm because it's an affordable and maybe interesting way for you to get into that situation, then you make it at home, you do your thing, and then you bring it in and you go register it. Like, what would be wrong with that? It's just because guns are bad, so we can't trust anybody with them.
And they did shift to, that's one of the things they talked about is that any gun dealer who now is selling any type of home manufacturer kit or anything like that
has to register it.
Has to put a serial number on it, right? They have to put a serial number on it, and they have to get a background check from anybody who wants to do it.
Yeah.
My question with that is, what is the system in which you're going to have people implement serial numbers? Because if you don't have some type of system and everyone just makes up their own numbers, you're going to have 90,000 guns with the serial number 69. What are you going to do about that? You have just everybody, if somebody uses a gun with a serial number 69, everybody who has that serial number 69 is going to get popped up, and now you have to go and search 10,000 houses.
Right.
Because people who are into gun, there are people who are into gun shit are weird. That's like not in like they're weirdos, but they're just
They're weird about
the
small
memes are
details.
weird. They're just weird. They say stupid stuff. You know, if you watch Grantham videos and stuff like that, he's wearing fucking Batman helmets.
He's a
and
weird dude,
He's
man.
a weird guy, and so
Goofy looking motherfucker.
people are gonna do that. Like
Yeah.
they're. So I'm curious on what that system is, or who the burden of proof is going to be. Same thing as when we talked about the magazines. Who's the burden of proof on to show when I purchased this magazine and that it was grandfathered in. If I'm able to get one somehow after July or whenever the first day is of the magazine ban, who's the burden of proof on to show that that's when I bought it? Because there is no serial number on it.
Yeah.
So if I have a P80 gun now, or if I get one after these regulations go into place that doesn't have a serial number, who's the burden of proof
Do I
on?
need to carry the receipt?
How do I know?
Yeah.
How do you know? How does anybody know that I didn't get it before or I didn't get it afterwards?
Yeah.
No one knows. And now the expectation is, that I have to bring this in to the federal government for them to put a serial number on it? Absolutely not.
No.
That's the whole point of me not doing this. That's the whole point of me going this route. Why would I do that?
Yep. No, it makes sense, man.
So the grandfather system isn't consistent, and it only opens the door for people's civil liberties to be stomped on. That's the only thing that does. No one's going to be freer because it's now on you to show that you have this within the grandfather period.
Yeah.
No one's going to be freer because of that.
Yeah, well, and on top of that too, it also further pushes the precedent that you can essentially make parts of firearms traceable or trackable or bannable. We saw this with like bump stocks and things like that. Like it becomes a part type of issue. Like it's nothing that is an actual firearm, because even if you're
reset triggers that we just saw, those are
Yes.
machine guns now.
Yeah, and like why is that okay, but something else isn't? It's because you at the time, as the ATF, essentially just deem it so.
Yes.
I mean, and like, well, okay, well, you can have this, but not this. You can put this on there, but
Yeah.
not, and that makes it the bad or good part.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about, because essentially you'd be making manufacturers of like jigs and the P80 kits and things like that having to serialize their product and register it with the federal government, and then the buyer of that product would just become a part of that system, in that having to put their name on that. What's to say like you have to do that with triggers now, and you have to do that with whatever barrel you're going to buy or whatever optics you're going to mount on it? I mean, where is the floor on this thing? Where's the ceiling on it? It doesn't go anywhere.
That's the inherent issue outside of my personal view of all of this being unconstitutional.
Yeah.
In the more, because we've talked about this before. I frame it in kind of two very different ways. That I have my personal feelings on it. I also recognize, as I said, how radical that sounds to some people, and so I know that if in this country that we have established, we have got to meet in the middle somewhere to decide what is reasonable.
Yeah.
And so in the
It's your moral and ethical beliefs versus your practical beliefs.
yes.
Right.
What was I getting at? Where's the okay. So this is the issue with these type of regulations, is that these aren't laws.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the issue with the triggers, the bump stock, the things like that. That is, they get ruled illegal by the ATF.
Yeah.
These are arbitrary designations that are slowly stripping away people's civil liberties because the executive branch has said that it's okay. That is not good enough. That's not a good enough reason for these things to be made illegal.
Because one person decided so.
Right, and while I also find the National Firearms Act to be unconstitutional, there is at least a legislation that deems short-barreled rifles and short-barreled shotguns to be illegal.
Yeah.
There is at least a law that says that, right? But these aren't laws. He says in this statement, I'm going to continue to push Congress to make laws for these things, but until then, I'm just going to have the ATF do it anyway. That doesn't work. That's not okay. You are effectively a tyrant. You are effectively a tyrant in this sense, because you are legislating from the executive branch via the ATF. It doesn't work that way. That's not how this country works.
Yeah.
You do not get to circumvent an entire branch, two entire branches, and just say that it's fine. That's not okay. This overreaching is ridiculous. It's unconstitutional, and that's the only purpose the ATF has at this point, is to take people's rights away. That's the only thing they're doing, is limiting what you can and can't do. We've talked about the can and can't do in a civil liberty and constitutional sense. We've talked about like the honey badger. You know, we went through a whole thing with that. I don't want to go through the whole thing again, but overnight, people who already own these guns, you're a felon if you don't take this in a register now, because we decided that it is now a short-barreled rifle.
Yeah.
And it wasn't before. What are you talking about? It doesn't work that way. You don't get to make people felons overnight without a law. It does not work that way. And it disturbs me. I'm trying to think about exactly how I want to put this, but it disturbs me that so many people are okay with this because of the subject matter. Because it's firearms, it's fine. I'm not gonna question it because Congress isn't doing anything. So just let the executive branch do it. That seems extremely dangerous, you know. And we'll talk like in Elon Musk. We're starting to see this in other areas, where in speech and in language, that the federal government, the executive branch in particular, is taking liberties because Congress has become so complacent and so bogged down in whatever you want to attribute it to. The executive branch is just taking it upon themselves to do what they want and what people are in some senses asking for but are not getting from Congress. That does not mean, and it does not give the executive branch the authority to overreach and circumvent and make those things so, because that's what the people want. That's when you start to get into populist dictatorship leadership, dictatorial leadership, like we talked about in the Roman Republic. We are pushing ourselves in that direction from a few different angles, and that's what makes it so scary to me. Is it's not just one party, it's not just one piece of the country that's doing this, it's
everybody.
It's because some people really are asking for this because they don't understand, they don't know, because they've been damaged and personally affected in their own life, and they can't see past that. And I'm not judging them for that, because like I said, if my kid got taken away, I don't know that I would still feel the exact same way. So I don't fault anybody for coming from it from that perspective. But again, we're also talking about complacency of the legislative branch. We're talking about the judicial branch. Like, I don't know, if you guys don't bring something, I don't know what to tell you. You know, we're gonna say that it's not our issue and that you guys can figure it out in the lower courts, instead of ruling finally and once and for all, you guys have got to stop this shit. You know, this is the line on the Second Amendment, and you guys crossed it 7 laws ago with magazine bans, with this trigger shit you're doing in the ATF. It's all got to go. Until someone does something, the executive branch is going to feel more and more empowered to continue this push for power. And people are okay with it. And people in the legislative branch, instead of doing it themselves, are championing this behavior. We can't do this, man.
That's what makes it so terrifying, truly, is it's not even the sorry about that. It's not even the singular executive action, which itself is tyrannical. Let's not forget that. But it's the fact that, like you said before, and it's not one side, it's all sides that do this to themselves. I mean, it was no different during the Trump administration. He did so many things through executive action, right? You have different bureaus. Yes, he did that.
He was effectively more anti-2A than Barack Obama was, because more gun rights were taken away during Donald Trump than during the full 8 years of Barack Obama.
Isn't that weird? And it just goes to show you that there's more and more, like you said, there's like avenues of input coming into this thing, pushing this further and further towards like the dictatorial realm. And I think it speaks volumes that when there is a regime change that does happen, and it goes from blue to red and red to blue, they don't immediately come in and slash exactly everything that their last guy did through executive order, because you would think you could. I know there's different legal battles and stuff like that, but like at the end of the day, like the executive branch giveth, the executive branch can taketh away. I don't understand how you can not do this. And every single time, this is from the minute it started, nobody has put that power back.
No.
Nobody. No. They've just continued to add. There's no subtraction, even if like, okay, I'm gonna repeal the IRS because that's within my permit. I can do that. You know?
Right.
And then I'm gonna replace it with the Bureau of Taxation. There's not even that.
No.
You're not even putting your own signature. You're just leaving that thing there because it gives you more precedent to do the thing you want to do.
Especially the longer it sits.
Yes, and there's only one direction that this goes.
Yeah.
It is more power confined into one person, which is literally the definition of dictator.
And from a personal perspective, from a liberty perspective, from a historical perspective, from what I know about oppressed societies, this seems like guns, seems like the last topic that you would want to be doing this on. And it's the first one. This is the one, maybe not the first one, some healthcare and stuff like that, with the American Affordable Care Act. So this is not the first one, but this seems like the last one that you would want to be pushing for dictatorial control over. And we see examples of this. We've talked about it time and time and time again. We see examples of this in the modern day. In Australia, they were locked up in I'm not going to say concentration camps. I almost said that. They were
quarantine
camps because they had no effective recourse. There's no way to control that. You're either going to get hemmed up, or we're going to knock you the fuck out, or we're going to take you anyway. That's it. You're going to come, or we're going to make you come. You're going to come with us, or we're going to make you come with us. Yeah. Terrible. So.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with the